Excellent. We're going to get started now. So thank you to everyone who's just joined us. My name is Amer Latif. This is our last webinar of 2021 in our thought leadership webinars that we're running. Today, I'm really pleased to have Lorna Keathley, or Coach K, as our students call her, from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, joining us. The topic of today's webinar is the importance of supporting students to learn and improve oral communication skills. So what we will be discussing today, by the way, here are contact details. We'll put these out at the end also, so you guys can contact us if you have any questions. Lorna's confirmed she's more than happy to answer any further questions you guys may have after this webinar. So as I was saying, in today's webinar, we're going to look at talking about some of the challenges faced by students in relation to oral communication. Also look at some of the strategies and tools that Lorna and her team have used or are using to support long-term working memory change and recall for oral communication, and also how Lorna's team have implemented technology to support these students to improve their public speaking skills. So something I know, Lorna, you're really passionate about. So before we get started onto this question, I thought what we do first is if you could explain a little bit about the type of classes you're teaching and the different types of student bodies that you have, graduates, undergraduates, etc.
I teach business and professional communication 240 and with our book in the information age. I have students from all over the university, from neuroscience to art class, nursing, and exploratory tracks. It is a gen ed education requirement course. So lots of different mindsets coming into my classes. My main focus is helping students get the tools that they need to get what I call the job, not a job, the job that they want after they graduate. And with Gen Z or upcoming Gen Alpha, they are what I call digital natives. So they've grown up on technology, and you have to target your audience to be able to meet them where they have their needs for learning. And Gen Z is very different than say myself and those of us that did not grow up and are what I call digital immigrants. And my classes has two broad goals. First is to help them to understand business processes and practices and the things that go in the professional communication side. And then of course, oral speaking. And so we have a few different speeches: introduction, informative speeches, two persuasive speeches, one's by themselves, and then one is in a group. And then impromptu happens as well. They have to answer questions. So it can be very scary. Half of my students have a high fear of communication. Speaking in public is definitely worse than swimming with sharks, if you want to use that analogy. Then I think, Amer, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's exactly what you're talking about right now. And I was curious to understand, because you when we spoke before too, you teach students from a variety of different backgrounds. So equity comes into play here too. So we talk about, for example, some students may have a different level of skill set or comfort zone in terms of public speaking. Others may be completely terrified of it and have had no preparation work or no support in the past at all. So something you've touched on here before too is, the common challenges that you're facing with these students. So if you could elaborate on that, what are some of those challenges that these students are facing?
They don't have a lot of interpersonal communication practice. And Dr. Haas says practice makes permanent. They would rather get online and go to a trusted source, an expert or an influencer to find out the information, or even to YouTube to learn something that they don't understand in class. This interconnectivity does not give them the skill set that they need to get the job. However, you can base your classes to use these behaviors to help them empower themselves and to give them the tools that they need to feel like they can succeed. And again, practice makes permanent. using the behaviors of gamification. And what that is, of course, they've been on video games for their entire lives, and they want to get as many points possible as they can. So if you frame your classes with points and then give them a goal to get to, instead of the other way around, well, you have an A now and you didn't do well in the speech and now you're at a C. You don't frame it that way at all. You frame it as, okay, this is how many points you need to do well in this class.
Mhm. And what's interesting also is that I know you really focused in on in terms of the working memory aspect and everything,
Yeah.
and looking at some of those. How did you come across that? I mean, what sort of things did you notice in your students when they're operating tasks? Was it towards the end of the course that you noticed that your students really struggled with working memory aspects? And this is not even, we've not even discussed, for example, the natural anxiety or social anxiety someone would feel about talking in front of another group. The working memory aspect, could you explain exactly how you've come across that part?
So many of us may know that students wait till the last minute to do their their assignments. Unfortunately, that doesn't work well with public speaking because you have to change long-term memory. And Dr. Laura Boyd has a TED talk on that, where she talks about the brain being neuroplastic. Even though they come in and they haven't had the practice, the brain can still change, but it takes preparation and long-term memory. And that's where I incorporated PresentPal, to where they were required to complete those points previous days and even up to a week ahead of time, so that they're practicing the speech over and over again and not waiting until the last minute to construct it and practice it. And that is a chemical change in the brain. It's not a long-term memory synapses change. And that's what we're looking for. So highly recommend looking at Dr. Laura Boyd on TED Talk.
Yeah, and for those who the references that Lorna is mentioning here, we've actually got them at towards the end of the slides here too. So everyone who's attended and registered, we will be able to provide this these over to you, and plus the recording of the webinar too. So what I want to get into a little bit more also is the long-term impact. So we touched on it slightly, Lorna. You were talking about, okay, working, how this affects them when they're starting to, in their work life past academia. What's the impact to students? So let's say, I'm putting myself as an example here. I studied electrical engineering at Colorado State. Now, when I went to school there was a public speaking class as an elective. By taking that elective, I didn't realize the benefit to me in the long term when I took it as a first year, I would say probably second semester as a freshman, right? And that became something by accident that I realized the value of this. A student that doesn't go through that journey and they don't have that or that proper support, what's the impact to those students?
The first impact is they may not get the job that they want. They would get a job and they're not in, maybe even in the field that they applied for. The second impact is you have to be able to explain your work to people outside of your group. And UT had some engineers that got a job, right? But they were unable to talk about their work to prospective clients. They ended up getting fired. Those students did not have our elective gen ed course. It was a different college. Our students are from mostly the business and a couple of art majors here and there, but they've seen the value of public speaking, especially the oral communication. And I disagree. It's not a soft skill set. It is a skill set that you need to be able to get, again, the job. Did you want to say something, Amer?
Yeah, no, I agree completely with that part, and I think it's more later on you realize the value of this. Going to the digital natives part, right? So that's something where I was very fascinated when you first brought it up, and it was the first time I actually heard that as a phrase. It's very fascinating when you're working with the generation now, the student population now. How have you noticed the difference there, or the in terms of public speaking, are the skills lacking for them in that department?
it's a difference of community. And I was thinking about this since we had our last meeting. They feel connected online, where I don't feel as connected. I go and I can find research, yes, but they feel like that influencer or that expert is a trusted individual. And I actually attended a presentation from Mr. Clint, and I'll tell you where he's from because you can look him up. CEO and founder of Arch Rival. And he got into Generation Z and who they trust. They don't trust gatekeepers. They don't trust people keeping the information away from them, keeping the tools away from them. And this is where PresentPal comes in and gives them the tools that they're used to, for one, and making it more of gamified or video based to where they can use this and they feel comfortable. It's like muscle memory. They have been on digital their entire lives almost. And this really does help them move forward, especially the ones with communication apprehension, because honestly, they're desperate. I have a few seniors in my class this semester that are very thankful for PresentPal.
Yeah. And what's interesting is particularly the students in transition. So in the last webinar that we did, we had the director from Florida State College at Zirkle over, and he was talking about the student population he's really worried about are the ones that are in transition from going, let's say, transferring over from a community college over to a university, and how at the community college they were offering students who were required to take a public speaking class the option to skip it. And by being able to do so, what they didn't realize is the impact it was having to these students when they're going into university and they needed these skill sets. And that's fascinating, that in different stages of our lives, how much of an impact, without us realizing, that actually has. I mean, where would you say, what are the sort of environments where students are kind of surprised that public speaking skill sets are more of a value? Is it just like at the job, let's say interview phase, or at a presentation at work, or is it other environments where you can see that too?
I would say definitely getting the job, because that's a focus I have in my class, because you have to be able to sell yourself as a product. And this class is foundational. I'm going to revert back to University of Tennessee really quickly. We felt the need for 2 classes. And so they're going to be required to have a gen ed course, which I would teach, and then whatever their colleges came up with, because of course, nursing jargon would be different than neuroscience jargon. So we have the exact opposite ideology in that there needs to be more of this based on the fact that they are not interacting socially as much, that their community is online, and that's how they see it. Back to the the need. They absolutely need public speaking to interact with others, and they're not just going to be with other Gen Zs. They're going to be with a diverse age group, and these age groups don't go online and look up at. I have never gone online and been influenced by anyone. I'm very much a researcher, yes, but I'm more of an informed decision maker, where they would just go and trust one person, right? You have to be able in your job and in the world, interact interculturally, cross-culturally, because it's a global workplace. And we did talk about that, where to get the job done, you might be with individuals like we are across the pond, right? Because I'm in the US and you guys are in Great Britain.
Yeah.
So it's definitely in the workplace, and that's the focus of my class, obviously. But to be able to interact socially for activism, and much of their activism is online, but not all of it. Sometimes you have to go and talk to individuals to get them on your side, and that's interpersonal.
Yeah. And interesting thing we found, because we were exploring this over, particularly in 2021 and 2020, when we started doing some of these webinars too, a lot of the topic or conversation was really around, how we went first into remote classes. Everyone went there. There's a huge amount of, panic. How do we get that arranged? And now we're going back into classrooms. They had its own challenges this last semester for all of us.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting, the people who are actually in this washing machine, I call it the tumble dryer of remote back into classroom, were the students. And the sort of stories that I'm hearing from with regards to the educators and how the students' skill sets have actually taken a step backwards by having that sort of uncertainty. There's more anxiety being present and everything. So all of a sudden you're doing presentations via Zoom, which has its own challenges because I can't see anyone, for example, or I'm not getting any visual feedback from anyone. And then all of a sudden from there, I'm back into classroom and I have to speak in front of a classroom. So it's very, very interesting. I'm going to move on to something that you alluded on to a little bit earlier, which was obviously we were very happy to support you in terms of when you wanted to trial this out, present PAL for the pilot for the fall semester, because of the passion you have and what you wanted to achieve with your students in terms of the improvements. So talk me through some of the strategies and tools you've used aside from present PAL in terms of improving or supporting that working memory and that information recall.
So when they construct their speech, it should be a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. And then they need to practice, because practice makes permanent and change that long-term memory. Part of that is having a great foundation and knowing how to do that. So I included what we call widgets at the University of Tennessee, but they're little games. And the games help them learn the foundations, learn how to construct a speech, learn different types of speeches and how you should present the information. And not, say, for example, informative, not be persuasive. And if you were doing a persuasive, have a call to action at the end. So definitely taking and giving them the opportunity to learn at their own place, because at their own space, in their own time, in their own place is what I call it. I have a flipped classroom. So all of the learning is done by them off on the computer, basically, something that they feel very comfortable with. And then they come back into the class and then we interact. And if they have any questions, I answer them. So I'm very much a coach in that aspect. And I make them call me coach because that is still a term that students identify with trust. And Gen Z, the key is trust, because they don't trust gatekeepers. And it was mentioned in the speech. They don't trust chancellors. They don't trust professors. You have to gain their trust. And to understand that, you have to understand their behaviors. And then we go back to gamification, and edutainment is another term that's been passed around. If you can combine what they like, what they have done for a long, long time, and move forward with that. And he brought up a new term, and I do like this, and I'm going to incorporate it: practice learning instead of homework, because homework is a taboo. Practice learning is much better.
Yeah. Well, what I was really impressed by is, when we've spoken also, and how you talk about teaching in general, and your ability to just adjust and continue to test and evolve, because your view, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, using technology not as a shortcut, but as an enhancement tool for skills. So coming to Present PAL, obviously, and I'll explain to people who we are for those who don't know, what was your main objective for that? Or what did you want? Because you had not heard of Present PAL before, obviously, before this last semester. So what is it that was your main sort of objective that you wanted to achieve out of our tool with your students?
Growth and learning is the big objective, and changing that long-term memory synapses in the brain would be number 2. But and 3, using a technology that they're familiar with. But definitely experiential learning, where you learn by doing, and they are very comfortable and trust their phone, right? So get them learning by doing and trusting an app and the app, you can change things up and make it user friendly to you. So you definitely have to have that as well. Using technology is going to be essential for all upcoming classes. It really is, because they have a different mindset, and it goes back to that trust. They're going to trust an influencer before they trust a professor. And you and I don't, we would trust a professor before we would trust an influencer. It goes back to know your target audience.
Yeah.
Identify it, identify how you can make your classes better using the technology. And I believe PresentPal has really got a pulse on that, especially with oral speaking.
Oh, we appreciate it. And we'll share some of the results with the audience in terms of what your students have come back to us with regards to how they found the tool and how it actually impacted their skill sets and their confidence with presenting. So before I pass it over to one of my colleagues, who's actually going to give everyone a demonstration of what PresentPal is, I thought it'd be a good time to maybe take one or two questions. So my colleague Aurelia, who is supporting us in the Q&A box, that's where you can type in your questions on the chat box there. She will, Aurelia, if you could maybe one or two questions right now, and we'll take some more towards the end.
Yeah, of course, Amer. So this is more of a question for Lorna that we got through our social media. So Lorna, what patterns have you seen emerge in sort of student oral communication skills in terms of all the disruptions that COVID has caused on campus?
They wanted to come back to campus. They wanted the interaction. I actually did a mini survey where I said, are you happy to be here on campus? And they were. And then I did a mini survey in the middle of the semester. And at the end, they value the interaction socially, which is another behavioral key that we need to understand about Gen Z. Patterns, they're willing to do the work. They want the tools to collaborate with professors to do the work. If they don't understand you and how you teach, they will go find it on YouTube. That was said many, many times, and I overheard conversations. So the pattern with these individuals are, if they don't understand it, they're going to go to YouTube, and then they're going to ask a friend, because it all goes back to trust. And hopefully I answered your question.
Thanks, Aurelia. We have time for one more. Is there any other question?
Yeah, maybe this could be better for a bit later, but that one is also for Lorna. So Lorna, since we've heard that you sort of piloted together with PresentPal, one of our listeners asked, how did you get the budget approved for sort of introducing new learning technology into your classroom?
So actually that came from the Student Disability Service. They contacted me because I teach communication apprehension courses. And let me define that a little. I had high communication apprehension where I would sweat, my face would get all red, I would talk so fast you couldn't understand what I was saying. And I used that example in class. I have been there and done that. And if I had this technology and I knew about brain change, it would have been a deal changer. So basically, PresentPal was kind enough to give us the pilot for free. And it would be interesting to know how much it's going to be for the future, and possibly if PresentPal could make it cheap enough, then you could just require the students to buy it themselves, or try to work with the university to get the technology fee that all students pay to get it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll come back for more questions later on, I promise. And please do keep typing your questions in on the Q&A box. That's in the toolbar on the chat box there. I want to introduce my other colleague, Samantha Turley, who will now give everyone who's not seen PresentPal before an opportunity to look at it. This is a live demonstration of the tool, and you'll get a brief sort of glimpse at it. So it's not a full detailed presentation, but I'm just mindful of the time. But we'll also share with you guys how you can actually probably schedule a more detailed demonstration with Samantha for yourself and other colleagues maybe. Okay, Samantha, I'll pass it over to you now.
Thanks, Amer, and yeah, thank you everybody for joining this evening. I'm really excited to have you all here. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how PresentPal first started, to then what the tool is about, how it's going to support students moving forward, and then how you at your institution, exactly like with Lorna, can pilot this completely free. But I'll run through that maybe towards the end of the demonstration. So just want to talk a little bit about how PresentPal started. So Chris, who's our CEO here on our screen, as part of his university degree, Chris had to present at least 2 to 3 times a week. Now, with the presentations and maybe public speaking in general, a lot of people suffer with the anxiety and the fear, but also worry about that organization and that content. So Chris decided to approach his kind of peers and mentors and say, well, look, I'm really struggling with this. What can we do? And they only really gave him 2 options. So the first one was to skip presentations as a whole. But why would he do that? He's losing out on a really key skill. And then secondly was to kind of maybe present to smaller groups, but then that would mean multiple presentations over, say, that week or 2 weeks. Again, building up on that anxiety, stress, and getting that organization in place. So with that in mind, Chris decided to kind of look into the market, look into technology, and see what tools and support is available. And we've come up with PresentPal. So PresentPal is an app. It's available on Android and iOS, but it's also available on tablets. So it covers all platforms. And it's a communication support tool that improves public speaking and presentation skills. So what does it do? Amer, next slide, please. So previously, and maybe Lorna will understand this, I think I met with Lorna before and have done a demonstration with Lorna, getting students organized. So when they come up with a presentation, maybe they may write their content on an A4 sheet of paper, or even the paper style flashcards. We at PresentPal have simplified that by creating virtual flashcards, which allows students to create bullet points to remind them about what it is they need to talk about. So if they had a presentation to do and they had 10 slides, they would have 10 flashcards. And then on each flashcard, they would bullet point what they need to talk about on that slide. But what if a student, whilst they're presenting, would forget a key statistic, a metric, maybe some really important data? We've developed a feature within these bullet points called a safety net. Amer, next slide. And the safety net is exactly what it says it is. It's extra information right when you need it. So you can pull that data out on the moment of fear or anxiety if you forget something. You can upload images to maybe help you describe a character or an event. You can put important data, important statistics and metrics there as well. So it's all about promoting confidence for the students so that they feel assured that as they're presenting, if they need to pull that information, it's there. Next slide, please, Amer. One of our key features of PresentPal, and Lorna, as we've discussed before many a times, the practice side of presentations. So we've got a feature called rehearsal mode. And rehearsal mode allows the students to actually practice their presentations, their audio. And the app will automatically record their audio as the student is practicing. What's really unique about it is that the student can then go back, listen, and flag areas of support they need to work on. And as you can see here on the screen, they can actually then select what it is they need to improve. So they could say slide 2, my content needs more work. Slide 3, my timing wasn't so great. So it's all about that scaffolding approach to building confidence. And Lorna, as you said there with your students using it in class, it has proved to work so well with student growth and development. Amer, next slide, please. What does it do? So it helps the student deliver comfortably and confidently. So here, as you can see the app in motion, the student's on slide 1, general information, and the student can see the bullet points outlining the topics that they need to talk about. As they scroll up or down, they can also see what's coming up next. Or if they get asked a question, they know what they were talking about before. Amer, next slide. With PresentPal, it also integrates with Microsoft PowerPoint and Google Slides. So what does that do? So that allows the student to get organized. They can log on to their PC or laptop, they can log into PresentPal, and they can access instantly their flashcards. What's really unique about this is that PresentPal can be used to control the slides. So it then becomes a clicker. So it allows the student to maybe freely walk around the room and present, but it also distracts them and allows them to stand there and present confidently. Next slide, Amer. Now, Lorna, just want to kind of just talk about how myself and yourself previously met, and just to talk about the pilot program. So Lorna previously met with me on a demonstration, and we discussed the challenges that the students were having, and we discussed how PresentPal could support that. And what we decided to offer Lorna was the chance to trial this. So we're going to give you the same opportunity. We're going to give you the opportunity to trial this for a whole semester. And what that means is your institution would get a number of licenses for you to assign to your students for them to use PresentPal. With that, you would receive full training and a dedicated account manager. As Lorna knows, she's met with our account manager many a times, and our account manager has actually supported Lorna in collecting data that shows Lorna where students are progressing. All that we ask generally is that around 2 weeks prior to your semester start date, that we just meet up, we check that your training's in action and that you're happy with everything and it's all set up in place. Next slide, please, Amer. So just talking about our kind of experiences with Lorna at UTK. So again, when I met with Lorna, just going through what the challenges were. So Lorna wanted to assist students with presentation preparation and increase their public speaking confidence. So we then implemented the pilot program with Lorna, which she's still currently using. And students were using PresentPal to prepare for their presentations. Not so much in the classroom, but for more outside of the classroom to practice and prepare ready for when they had their assessments and exams coming up. Next slide, Amer. So from research, speaking to Lorna and student feedback, of the licenses we actually assigned, 96% of students actually activated their PresentPal account. And from student feedback and from Lorna's feedback, just literally after 2 presentations with PresentPal, their public speaking confidence has doubled. And Lorna, I don't know if you want to kind of add on that about your experience with PresentPal, about kind of what your students have said about using it.
They really feel comfortable with the interface, and they like that they can make it user friendly for them. Like I had them, they have to take a screenshot and then send it to me. They actually have to record on different days ahead of their speech. And some of them had different colors, which is important if you get back to DEI. So the interface was almost as essential as them putting the information in, to be honest. And there was significant progress in learning, more so than I've seen in my other classes. I guess you should say, or I should say sooner, which helps those synapses change in the long-term memory and gives them an even stronger foundation for moving forward at UT and then in the world.
Absolutely. And it's amazing to get that feedback from the students as well, and to know that the actual tool does support student confidence and growth within presentations and public speaking skills. Thank you, Lorna. Amer, thanks so much. And thank you everybody for hearing me out today. And I will now pass you back to Amer.
Thanks, Samantha. And that was brilliant in terms of the information. So I thought it'd be good, Lorna, just to elaborate a little bit more just on some of these numbers that we're seeing here. One of the things that I think I was really impressed by was you touched on it earlier about study behaviors that students have. And we've all seen this. A lot of times students, for example, will leave it to the last day to revise for either an exam or, let's say, a presentation. So the rehearsal mode on the tool and how you use this for your students, not just for memory recall aspects, but to encourage better study behaviors. I think that was really, really interesting. What could you talk a little bit about that in terms of the impact that's made on your students in terms of study behaviors?
Yes, it actually helps them with time management. They, with the requirement of having to have 2 of them done ahead of time, that aided in that. And again, it also helped change long-term memory. But if you can get them to start doing the work ahead of time, then last minute challenges don't end up giving them a bad grade. And they absolutely hate losing points. They worry so much about the points that not doing the present pal is not an option. So the professor, yes, the professor has to actually go in and add points. You can't just say, use this and it will help you. You have to put value on it in your classroom so that they put value on it too.
Yeah. And this goes to your, what you talked about earlier about the gamification side of it and introducing that within teaching and how students absorb information. So the numbers here where I wanted to talk about this to explain a little bit further. The one on the left, the 96%. Okay, what does that mean? It's really talking about how we at PresentPal really took advice and feedback from students. What we wanted to do is create a tool that wasn't a barrier in itself, that it wasn't cumbersome for students to pick up and they got terrified by it because it had so many features and they said, this looks too complex. I can't activate it. I don't want to use this. So we want to create something that literally within 5 minutes of playing around with it, they can start using it. And that's really what the number's speaking to here. Lorna, I mean, you're instrumental in this. Obviously, you were able to get the activations very quickly and very fast with your entire student population. And the other one I was really, really fascinated by, because in a short period of time, for students to have that sort of confidence rating improvement shows quite a lot in terms of how much this can go and grow with the student as they increase usage with this in their other communication skills too. So yeah, very fascinating. Lorna, anything else you want to touch on those stats?
Yes, I wanted to add that 2 of my classes that were a product of those statistics had high communication apprehension. So it is astounding that it went from 30% to 60% in such a short time, which really is essential for them to not have a fear of public speaking and to be able to get out there and get the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we'll do now is on the chat box, my colleague Aurelia is going to actually put in a link to Samantha's calendar. This allows you to book in a live demonstration, as I said before, for yourself, a more detailed demonstration for yourself and any other colleagues you want to invite. So you can access her calendar and select a time that's suitable and book a demo with Samantha. So what I'm going to just do now on the screens, and I can't take credit for this this GIF. This goes to one of our marketing gurus who puts these up, and you will see a poll come up. So if you could just indulge me and just tell us what you would be interested in knowing further about. So this could be, are you interested in doing a similar pilot like Lorna at your institution? You want a live demonstration with Sam or Samantha? We call her Sam, by the way, and the office. If you want to speak to me and ask me some more questions, you can select that. You can contact Lorna, select that too. We've got some case studies. You can select that option. Or if you just want an individual trial license, a free trial license for yourself, feel free to select that. Okay, I'll let it run for just a couple of seconds and then I'll close the poll. Perfect. Aurelia, I'll bring you back on to take our final batch of questions if we have any.
Yes, Amer, we do indeed. So this question is directed more towards you, and it's sort of about the PresentPal pilot. Could you tell us a little bit more, sort of how long does it take to set up a pilot for an institution, and just about the whole sort of process of setting it up?
Yeah, it's a good question, because as we all know, the transition period from fall semester into spring is very short. So what has to happen in here? So Samantha alluded to this earlier. We need to obviously show you the tool properly so you fully understand exactly how it works. We need to then train you guys and your team, make sure you're fully trained, provide you all the support. So a lot of the groundwork in terms of creating content to support you, we've already created. We've got those ready for you, survey forms, etc. So an answer to that question, I would say, once you've had your live demonstration, I go back to that 2-week window. As long as you have, say, 2 weeks period between your semester starting, you should be comfortably able to implement this pilot. So that's between now and January or February, whenever your semester starts, or quarter. Hope that answered the question.
Can I add something, Amer?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was super easy, really, to get the pilot up and running. They're there to support you. And I just want you to know I don't work for them. They've really made my class a better class, and I really appreciate that. But also the licenses are, if you want, I had my students have to do them in class. So they're kind of captured. They went online, they got their licenses. I sent them to all their emails. It was super easy, way more super easy than Canvas that I have to deal with on a daily basis.
Excellent. And folks, I've got my contact details there. Lorna's email address is there too. As we said before, more than happy to speak to you guys, reach out to us at any point if you have any questions. Thank you again for your valuable time. I want to especially thank you, Lorna. It was amazing as always listening to you and your insight. You're doing a great job, and I'm always fascinated by educators who are innovative in their approach and style of teaching. So continue doing the great work you are. I'm sure your students really appreciate you. So University of Tennessee is very lucky to have you. Also, I want to thank my colleagues, the ones who've done all the hard work behind the scenes. So Aurelia, thank you for managing all the support there, and also Samantha for doing the demonstration too. Wish everyone happy holidays, stay safe, and look forward to seeing you guys in the new year. Take care. Bye-bye.